Today we have to talk about Cyberpunk Edgerunners. It's incredibly good. It's written well, the character development's really good, and the transition of the scenes and like it's a mess in terms of pacing because they had a very short amount of time, 10 episodes. But what they do with those 10 episodes is amazing because you get emotion, you get so attached to these characters in those short amount of time because they have the common character tropes where it's like, oh, loud girl has feelings for protagonist, like that sort of thing. Like it's not really a spoiler because you'll see, but and you have the emo ones, and you have the cold and distant ones, and then you have the charismatic leader, and then you have the new kid, and everything goes together really well with how it's written because the way the characters meet up, it seems so natural because it's so what happens in Edge Runners is basically your classic random kid meets girl, girls bring him to a life of crime, like that sort of thing. It starts off with our boy David, who is a Latino who from I assume he grew up in Night City, but I don't remember 100%. And he lives with his mom, and his mom is very worried about him because he often causes trouble at school, and he attends a high tech prep school, and his mom's working long hours with body disposal for the city, dealing with the corpses of cyber psychos. But we'll get to that. So David is he's very your classic he doesn't appreciate his life type deal, and so he's into things called shards, or I think that's the right word. I'm not 100%, but essentially he uses in these shards you can see how people died, and the most popular shards are from cyber psychos, which is essentially criminals, not criminals, which is essentially people souped up with a bunch of cyberware weapons going on rampages. And what the shards do is let you experience their last moments. So it starts off with him watching one of the latest criminals. His mother's actually the one who was put in charge of, or one of the people put in charge of actually taking the corpse in. So we get to see him going from watching this recording to seeing his mom on TV, and he's very happy to see her, and she's like, oh, that's nothing, get ready for school. So when we quickly see also that they're very tight up for cash, considering the washing machine stops working immediately after it runs out of funds, so he has no uniform. So we go to school, and he gets bullied. Like it's kind of expected. Poor kid goes to rich school, gets bullied, but he's a real genius. From what the show tells us, we don't get to really see that though, which is it's kind of a bummer, but it's fine because what shortly happens after that is he causes an incident, which leads to his mom coming to pick him up, and those series of coincidences lead to an attack. Like, if you play the game, you know how insane Night City is. And you get the feeling that, holy shit, this could actually happen in the game. Like, this isn't some random thing. In the game itself, there are loading screens where people are just talking about this stuff, where it's like, oh, a police representative comes to the radio show. Like, I hear this all the time whenever I load up the game, and they talk about shootouts in the middle of the highways. Like that's the type of city Night City is. So when you see that in the show, it's not entirely foreign because it seems like such a natural thing that Cyberpunk 2077 builds in that world. So being able to see the actual implications of it and how it affects its citizens is amazing. And we get to see the reality of what happens to these poor people because they have they have a squad called Trauma, which is essentially paramedics. The paramedics show up, and Trauma, they don't give a shit about her. They scan everyone around them with their tablet, and they say, oh, she doesn't have coverage, and just leave her to basically die. David freaks out and cut to getting her treatment, and then tragedy, death, and yeah. So we later find out that David, or no, we later find out his mom actually stole cyberware from the cyber psycho that actually went on a rampage recently, that David was also watching his shard for. So David takes that because the prep school kids that bullied him pull up to his house and start beating the shit out of him because they don't like him and they want him to drop out. And they call him again after his mom dies to further tell him and insult him about it. So the very last thing David does in that school is he pulls up wearing his new cyber psycho or cyberware from a cyber psycho, which is military grade, which is an important distinction because from what we've heard, the military grade shit is what is the most impactful to lead to cyber psycho uh, syndrome or thing because it puts a huge strain on the body and the mind. And that's exactly why it's so important that we establish that first. Because in the game, you don't know this from the game. The game lets you wear cyberware like it's nothing. We need to establish this very important because we do have cyber psycho incidents, but for us as the player, we get decked out and then nothing happens to us. This is a really good way for us to see from a first person perspective how cyberware can affect actual, the people in Night City. So essentially, he dons it and nothing happens, which is a huge surprise because even the developers of it, one of the heads of Asakusa, I think I'm getting that name wrong, but it's fine. Uh, what essentially happens is that he's watching his son getting the shit beat out of him, and he's told, oh, the student's using military grade stuff as if it's nothing. And this is important because they're also working on military grade cyberware and suits, and they need someone to test it. And so he's thinking, oh, uh, well, we can use him. So we cut to later. David's riding the train. Now this part is where it gets a little. I don't really see this, but you're gonna. It's like it's world building in a way that the player of the game can't do because what we have here are netrunners or our David's best girl Lucy pulled up for the first time and tries to steal his chip, and David immediately realizes this and catches her. So what ends up happening is that uh, Lucy ends up taking David to her house after they had to team up and start stealing chips from all sorts of corporate bastards, which quite frankly you'll see if you play the game and if you know some of the lore of Cyberpunk, I'll just let you know now, they have had full-scale wars of corporations. I don't remember exactly the reason why, but just know corporations are essentially the equivalent of actual nations because they go to war for God knows what reason, but the amount of destruction they cause and the amount of deaths and calamities that they actually bring. By the way, these happen in the cities, and even if the corporations themselves don't have a direct hand in it, it's still ridiculous to think that they would allow this kind of shit. Because the government basically just says, I don't even know. Like you can get outfitted with rocket launchers in your arms, and the corporations are making bank off of all this shit, and they don't really do anything about it. Like corporations are just out for profit. The government in the games are just they don't really give a shit either, as long as there's not actual criminal activity. So the people in the cyberpunk universe are outfitted with all sorts of shit, and it's kind of normal to see someone with even the minor blades coming out of the arms or some shit. Like that's the minimum like you can expect. So as we continue through David's transition from a prep school kid to a criminal, if you want to call him that, we see him develop feelings for Lucy, and obviously naturally, this is the kind of show we're watching here. If he didn't fall for Lucy, what would be the point of them ever actually meeting? So we get to that point, and then we meet a guy named Maine. Maine's basically the head of the crew. He's really angry at David because David had actually used the cyberware that was supposed to be used for Maine. Maine had bought it off his mom, but since his mom died, he didn't know, so he put it on himself to get revenge on the rich boy. But what ends up happening is that's how he ends up joining Maine's crew. And I don't want to spoil too much of what happens after that. Like what I just described was around the first 2 or 3 episodes. So I'm just gonna give you quick synopsis of the characters because, quite frankly, they're all really good. A few of them I feel like should like. There is one character I love her. She's my best girl in the show, and she doesn't get a lot of development, and I feel like that's good because if we gave her that development, it would justify what she did later on. And I feel like that would be a disservice to the emotions that the characters feel. Like we as the viewers would have sympathy for her, but it wouldn't be right for us to feel that way when our characters how would they know any better? So we are in the seat of the characters when they make this huge betrayal, and I love her, and she's my favorite, and I don't want to spoil who she is because when you get to her, you'll see. But okay, but enough about my fan talk about her. Let's get to the characters. So we have David, former prep school kid. He's your natural newbie in criminal organization type shit. He's pretty raw, if you want to use that word. He's really eager to get into the business once he joins. He keeps hitting up me and telling him, oh, he wants to practice. He needs to learn the ropes. And yeah, that's how we basically meet him. He's basically your awkward teen who's really excited about becoming a criminal. We meet Lucy, another her she's a net runner who we previously established was robbing people's chips in I didn't say this before, but they were on a train. That's why that's why they so eagerly robbed them because it's really easy to get away with that on a train, considering the fact that how far you can go and you can't really exactly tell them to turn back. So she's a net runner. I won't give away too much of her backstory. This is very important and it's very spoilery. But Lucy is a very skilled net runner, and she's one of the most skilled apparently, and she's very good at hacking Asakusa gear and security firewalls, which is important because they are actually working for a guy, a fixer. For the record, a fixer is someone who hires gangs and stuff to do things for them. So the fixer wants some information from Asakusa, and and she naturally would be the best fit for it. It's so yeah, it's kind of normal. It's kind of natural. Next we meet Maine. Maine is a pretty cool guy. He's your basic leader, but he's very charismatic. No, not charismatic. He's a basically cool guy. Like he's the big brother you always wanted. He hangs out with David. He like they get a kind of familiar brothership going on. It's really cool how they develop that. Like they talk about how Maine encourages David to finally get it off his ass and go and talk to Lucy. Well, not talk to Lucy, but like get with Lucy and stuff. But yeah, he's your basic Big Brother esque character. Uh, then we have Dorio, Maine's girlfriend. We don't get a lot of development for her, but we can tell that she very much cares about Maine, and she, quite frank, like she's right to have her worries about Maine, as we'll learn later on, which I'm not gonna spoil. But yeah, so well, Dario is basically Maine's girlfriend, and she does help out a lot in the crew. Like she's basically second command after Maine. Next, we have Kiwi, who is another net runner like Lucy. She actually had found Lucy, and she's quite skilled. We get to see a lot of her skills in the show, and they we get to see her using all of these quick hacks, which if you play the game, you wish you could do that. She takes out whole squads in seconds with her skills. Like that's how good she is. They're pretty good builds. I looked them up. They're very good builds out there for Kiwi. I myself haven't really gone into those yet because I'm currently trying to get scaled up for the Sandevistan because I really want to get a Sandevistan, but I can't get it in plenty. Yeah, but we're not talking about my gameplay right now. We also meet Rebecca, which is your basic loud lolly with shotguns. She's one of those girls that just she's very pushy. She makes it known that she cares about David a lot. Uh, Not early on. Early on, she's your basic. She's a big sister essentially. That's what she is. And later on, we meet things happen, and there's a time skip, and she does have an interest in Davy, which we learn later on, but that's not really what's important. Well, no, it is really important because we get to see her care about David, and as we continue, the downfall of David, it's just so it's tragic to see with Rebecca and her feelings for him, and seeing him in so much pain, and how it's just it's hard to watch sometimes with how she has these conflicting feelings. Like we know David and Lucy are a thing, and Lucy does care. And later on, Lucy steps back from the crew, so Rebecca's really the only one there to stand by and try and help David through like tough times whenever he's like in the field. So to see her watch him go through these pains, like everyone loves Rebecca for that because like Rebecca, she cares so much and she went through a lot, as you'll see as you watch the show. And you'll love her, honestly. She's loud, she's obnoxious, she's very quick to the trigger. One of the first meetings she has with David early on is just her pointing a gun at him as she opened the door to collect a package, and it's fun to watch her. So next we have Pilar, which is Rebecca's brother. That's not really a spoiler, I would say, because it doesn't really matter. He's if you watched anything, he's your basic loud, perverted moron. He gets touchy feely with a lot with Lucy sometimes, but then he gets zapped. Well, no, not sometimes. One time, one singular time, and then he gets zapped. And whenever they have parties, he's like the life of the party and stuff against shit. So he's like he's an obnoxious guy, one of those arrogant, not arrogant. It's not the right word. He's just one of those crazy bastards, and he's obnoxious. And whenever something happens, you can always tell that he's the one that's gonna run into trouble and get caught up in it. And it's like he, he's a good character. So for the last one, uh, I want to talk about the pacing of the show and one of its downfalls because they rush a lot of the content. There are several downfalls of characters that were no. There was one downfall of a character that was insanely rushed because they fall for cyberpsychosis, and this happens in the course of a single episode, if I remember correctly. And it's so quick. We don't even get any hint of it till that episode. And then it's just a downward spiral from there. Next, we have David's character arc with his mom. And it's so fast. And I don't want to say it feels unearned because she vents and she gets her emotions out. And David, he understands them. He's not like an arrogant guy. Like he understands his mom's trying to help him, and he comes to terms with that. And it's it's not one of those things where it's like post the loss. It's one of those things that's like, oh, I acknowledged it, and then it's too late by that time, even though at that moment it doesn't feel too late. I really feel like they should. I don't want to say remake the series because they did such a good job. I feel like they should make a spin-off or an anthology about each individual character. But yeah, those are my feelings on Cyberpunk Edgerunners, and I hope you enjoyed it. It's so good. If you really go watch it. Cyberpunk 2077. A lot of people are getting on to it right now, thanks to the new hype. Uh, there are a bunch of channels producing a shit ton of videos, so now would be the kind of the best time to get on it, because once you get on it right now, because there are a lot of grinding involved. Like I myself, I've been playing it all last week, and I can't even use the Sendebistan yet because like I have college and I don't have a lot of hours to play on it, but still. So get on it while the glitches are still like trying to be patched, because you want to use those glitches as much as you want. And yeah, that's about all I gotta say. I also gotta say like and subscribe, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Uh, Good day.